You are about to learn facts about ancient Egypt that not even all historians know. I will reveal the shocking truth about how the Egyptians slept. We are used to thinking of sleep as a physiological need. It is a time when the body rests. We seek comfort for this. A soft bed, a quiet room, a comfortable pillow. But for one of the greatest civilizations in history, ancient Egypt, everything was completely different. For them, night was not a time of rest, but a battlefield. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn why a regular pillow was foreign to them and what object replaced both their bed. What if I told you that everything you believed about Egyptian bedrooms was untrue? Movie scenes paint a picture of luxurious four-poster beds, but the reality was much more prosaic and interesting. The concept of a bed, in our modern sense, simply did not exist for most Egyptians. A sleeping place was a function, not a luxury item. It had to fulfill specific tasks, and comfort was not the main one. Most ordinary Egyptians, peasants and artisans, slept on the floor. They spread mats woven from reeds or palm leaves on the hard-packed earth. These mats were a universal household item, serving as a rug during the day and a bed at night. They provided minimal insulation from the cool ground. After sleeping, the mat was simply rolled up and put away, freeing up living space. People often slept where they were working or where it was most convenient. On hot nights, many preferred to sleep in the courtyard or on the flat roof of the house. During the day, the mat could be left in the main room of the house. There was no strict division between bedroom and living room. Life was simple, and everyday life fully corresponded to this. Those who were a little better off, such as scribes or minor officials, might have low wooden platforms. This was a wooden frame onto which a net of ropes or leather straps was stretched. This design was more like a bed and provided better ventilation. It raised the sleeper above the floor. The materials were the most affordable, local wood, such as acacia or sycamore. The designs were simple without frills. The main task was to create a flat surface. Sometimes several layers of linen were placed on the rope net. Truly luxurious beds were only available to the highest nobility and pharaohs. Archaeologists find real works of art in tombs. These beds were made of cedar or ebony imported from abroad. They were decorated with intricate carvings, gilding, and ivory inlays. The beds of the nobility often had symbolic shapes. The legs could be made in the form of animal paws, for example, a lion. This had a protective meaning. The animal seemed to guard its owner's sleep. The bed became not just a piece of furniture, but a magical artifact. The Egyptians used linen sheets as bedding. Linen was the main fabric in Egypt, valued for its coolness and hygiene. The finer the linen, the wealthier the owner. They also covered themselves with linen blankets, but even the pharaoh's bed was quite hard by our standards. The idea of sinking into soft feather beds was alien to the Egyptians. They valued a firm, flat surface. This was due to both their ideas about health and practical considerations in a hot climate. Thus, 99% of the population slept on a simple mat. This is radically different from our ideas about ancient comfort. How do you think you would be able to sleep on a reed mat every night? Share your opinion in the comments. Are you ready to learn the truth about the strangest sleeping accessory in history? When we look at images of sleeping Egyptians, one detail catches our eye. Instead of a soft pillow, their heads rest on a curved object made of wood, stone, or ivory. The headrest was a stand consisting of a base, a leg, and a semicircular hollow. This hollow was perfectly designed to support the head in the neck or back of the head area. The design seems incredibly uncomfortable to us. Sleeping on a hard, curved stone seems impossible. However, this device had several important functions. First, in the hot climate of Egypt, it allowed air to circulate around the head. This was much more comfortable than lying on a pillow damp with sweat. The head remained cool throughout the night. Second, the headrest raised the head above the surface of the bed. This had important practical significance, especially for those who slept on the floor or a low platform. It protected the sleeper's hairstyle and face from contact with the surface. Egyptians, especially the nobility, wore elaborate wigs. These wigs were expensive and required careful maintenance. Sleeping on a headrest meant preserving the elaborate hairstyle until morning. It was not only a matter of comfort, but also of social status. The materials used for headrests varied. Ordinary people used headrests made of ordinary wood or fired clay. Noble Egyptians ordered them made of alabaster, faience, ivory, and even stone. They were often solid or consisted of two parts. The headrests of the nobility were true works of art. They were decorated with carvings, hieroglyphs, and images of deities. Often, the god Bes was depicted on the leg of the headrest. This was not just a decoration, but a magical protection. The use of headrests seems strange to us, but it was deeply rational for that era. It was an item of hygiene, status, and magical protection. What do you think was more important to the Egyptians? Physical comfort or symbolic protection? But where exactly they used these headrests, alone with the cool night air, I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of Egyptian life. We are used to thinking of the bedroom as a closed, intimate space inside the house. But for the ancient Egyptians, the most desirable bedroom was often not the house itself, but what was above it. We are talking about the flat roofs of Egyptian dwellings. The climate of Egypt was and remains hot and arid. During the day, stone and mud houses heated up in the sun. By nightfall, the stuffiness inside became unbearable, especially in the cramped homes of ordinary townspeople or peasants.
Do you see the way those three stars align just above the horizon?
Yes, I see it. It is magnificent.
Sleeping on the roof was a very special experience. People slept under the open sky, looking at the stars. The night breeze from the Nile brought long-awaited coolness. It was the only place where you could breathe freely. They brought those same reed mats and wooden headrests up to the roof. There was no special furniture there. Sometimes they made light fabric awnings to protect themselves from the morning sun. It was a simple and effective solution. It was also a social practice. In cities, houses stood close to each other. Sleeping on the roof was a collective activity. People could hear their neighbors and see the lights on other roofs. This created a sense of community and security. In wealthy homes and villas, the roofs were more comfortable. There could be special areas surrounded by low walls for privacy. Climbing plants could grow on the walls, creating shade. During the short winter season, when the nights became cool, the Egyptians returned inside their homes. They slept in the main rooms, sometimes closer to the hearth if there was one. But for most of the year, the roof remained the main bedroom. There were also sleeping places inside the house. These were usually small rooms or alcoves at the back of the dwelling, but they were small, dark, and poorly ventilated. Therefore, sleeping on the roof was a conscious choice. Sleeping under the stars was not romantic for the Egyptians, but a daily necessity. This shows how much their lives were dictated by the climate. If you like learning such unexpected details about the past, please like this video. Are you ready for the shocking truth about what the pharaohs slept in? Modern people have a whole wardrobe for sleeping: pajamas, nightgowns. We are used to changing before going to bed. The ancient Egyptians had virtually no concept of special sleeping clothes. The main and, in fact, the only fabric in Egypt was linen. Egyptian linen was renowned for its quality. It was light, durable, and most importantly, hygienic. It absorbed moisture well and dried quickly in hot climates. Most Egyptians slept in the same clothes they wore during the day. For men, this was a simple loincloth or shent. For women, it was a straight linen dress with straps, called a calazeres. These clothes were so simple that they did not interfere with sleep. Peasants and artisans who worked all day in the heat wore a minimum of clothing. Their clothes were functional. There was no point in changing into something else at night. They simply went to bed in their daytime garment. Given the hot climate and sleeping on open roofs, many Egyptians slept without any clothes at all. This was not considered shameful or unusual. In the ancient world, attitudes toward the body were much simpler. Nobles and members of the royal family could afford more. They slept in tunics made of the finest, almost transparent linen. This fabric was incredibly expensive and emphasized their status. On cool nights, the Egyptians covered themselves. These could be thicker linen blankets. Sometimes they used cloaks or capes that they wore during the day. Wool was rarely used, as it was considered ritually unclean. This simplicity in clothing was offset by the complexity of the sleeping space itself. Have you ever wondered what the bedroom in the home of a simple Egyptian looked like? In the next chapter, we will take a look inside their homes. As we have already established, most Egyptians did not have a separate bedroom in the modern sense. However, there were still areas in their homes that were intended for rest. The architecture of the dwelling was closely related to how and where people slept. The homes of ordinary people were built of mud bricks. A typical house of a commoner or craftsman was narrow and often two-story. The ground floor could house a workshop and a kitchen. The living quarters were located above. In this main room, special niches or alcoves were often made in the walls. These recesses were slightly raised above the floor. It was in such an alcove that a mat was spread out. It was the most secluded place in the house, protected from drafts. Lighting was minimal. The windows were small and located high under the ceiling. This made the rooms dark but protected them from the scorching sun. Ventilation was well thought out. Roofs often included special wind catchers. These structures captured the cool northern breeze and directed it into the dwelling. In the rich villas of the nobility, the layout was more complex. There were already separate rooms that could be called bedrooms. They were located in the rear, quiet as part of the house. These rooms were more spacious and better furnished. Such a bedroom could have a wooden platform bed. Next to it was a chest for clothes and linen fabrics. The walls could be decorated with paintings depicting scenes of nature or patron deities. The floors in the houses were earthen or adobe. They were covered with mats. In wealthy homes, the floors could be stone. But in any case, the sleeping area was raised, whether it was an alcove or a platform. Thus, the architecture of the Egyptian house was completely subordinate to the climate. The sleeping area was not the center of the room, but its functional part. It was as simple as possible, but at the same time well thought out in terms of ventilation and privacy. What if I showed you that sleep was more frightening to the Egyptians than any enemy? For us, sleep is rest. For the ancient Egyptians, it was a time of great danger. They believed that during sleep, one part of the soul, the Ba, left the body. The Ba was often depicted as a bird with a human head. It was believed that at night it traveled through the afterlife, meeting gods and spirits. The body remained defenseless. Night was a time when the world of the living and the world of spirits touched. The Egyptians believed that evil forces became active in the darkness. These spirits could try to enter the sleeping body while the Ba was absent. They could cause harm. Nightmares were considered direct evidence of an attack by evil spirits. It was not just a bad dream. It was a real battle that the soul was fighting in another world. Waking up from a nightmare meant that danger was near.
The darkness stirs.
Therefore, the main task was not to ensure comfort, but to provide magical protection. The entire culture of sleep in Egypt was built around rituals and objects that were supposed to protect the body. Sleep was not rest. That is why the beds of the nobility were so important. The lion's paw feet were not just decoration, they were guardians. The bed became a magical fortress protecting the sleeper. Every home had images of patron deities. They were placed in special niches. It was believed that they never slept and protected the home from nighttime threats. Prayers before bed were appeals to them for protection. Waking up in the morning was perceived as a miracle. The Bey safely returned to the body. the person became whole again. The Egyptians rejoiced at dawn not only because a new day was beginning. This worldview completely changes our understanding of their sleep. They did not go to bed, they entered the night. Every evening was a preparation for a ritual journey. They took this very seriously. This belief in the dangers of the night gave rise to an entire industry of protective items. Have you ever wondered what role amulets played in everyday life? In the next chapter, we will look at the Egyptians' arsenal of magical protection. Since sleep was so dangerous, the Egyptians surrounded themselves with powerful amulets. These items were not just decorations, they were tools charged with magical power, active shields against evil spirits. They were worn on the body and placed around the sleeping area. The most popular and powerful protective amulet was the Ujat, or Eye of Horus. This symbol represented the healed eye of the god Horus. It symbolized healing, protection, and rebirth. The Egyptians believed that the Ujat could see evil and reflect it away. Ujat amulets were worn around the neck as pendants. They were placed under the headboard. The image of the Eye of Horus could be painted on the walls of the bedroom or on the back of the bed. It was believed that the sleeper was under the direct gaze of the deity. Another important protector of the night was the god Bes. He was a dwarf deity with a funny but menacing appearance. Bes was the patron of the home, family, and, in particular, sleep. His images were found in every Egyptian home. Figurines of Bes were placed at the entrance to the bedroom or right next to the bed. He was often depicted on the headboards themselves. It was believed that his fearsome appearance scared away evil spirits and night demons. He was a guardian who never slept. Another popular amulet was the Ankh sign. It is a symbol of eternal life. Worn during sleep, it was supposed to ensure that the soul would safely return to the body in the morning. Amulets were made from various materials. The most common was faience, a type of glazed ceramic in blue or green. These colors symbolize life and rebirth. Wealthy people could afford amulets made of gold and semi-precious stones. For an ordinary Egyptian sleeping on a mat, a simple knot could serve as an amulet. Knots on ropes were also given magical significance. But even the poorest person tried to have at least one faience ujat with them.
Words of the ancients grant strength. Let the
Passive protection in the form of amulets alone was not enough. The Egyptians believed in the enormous power of the spoken word. Before going to sleep, it was customary to perform small rituals and read special spells. This was the active phase of protection. There were entire collections of magical texts intended to protect the home. Scribes copied them onto papyrus. Fragments of such papyri could be kept in the house and read aloud by the head of the family every evening. These spells were not just prayers, but commands. The Egyptian did not ask, but commanded evil spirits not to enter his house. He identified himself with the gods, for example, with Horus or Thoth, and spoke on their behalf.
Hear these protective words, spirits of the
An example of such a spell could be the formula, I am protected like Horus. Evil that comes to me will be defeated. Uttering these words created an invisible wall around the house. Faith in the power of words was absolute. The rituals also included purification. Before going to bed, the Egyptians performed ablutions. The purity of the body was a guarantee of ritual purity. It was believed that evil spirits were attracted to dirt. Incense, such as frankincense or myrrh, was burned in the rooms. This was also part of the ritual. The sweet smoke was supposed to purify the space. Houses had small altars dedicated to household gods. These could be images of Bes or the hippopotamus goddess Tart, the patroness of the hearth. Before going to bed, small offerings were made to them. The walls of the house themselves served as magical protection. Protective symbols were often painted at the entrance. Doorways were considered particularly vulnerable places through which evil could penetrate. They were sealed with spells. This daily routine turned going to sleep into a complex, multi-step process. First, physical preparation, a mat, a pillow, then ritual purification, and finally, magical activation of protection through words and amulets.
Of the deep night, cast upon us
All this
your
shows how
angels.
seriously the Egyptians took the night. For them, it was not a passive state. They actively prepared for their encounter with the invisible world, using all the magical arsenal at their disposal.
By the Eye of Horus, rise and protect us.
Since sleep was a journey of the soul, dreams were reports of that journey. The Egyptians took dreams incredibly seriously. These were direct messages from the world of the gods. It was believed that in dreams, the gods could warn people of danger.
A vision.
They could give advice or predict the future. A good dream was a good omen, while a bad dream was a cause for serious concern. There were entire dream books, papyri with interpretations of dreams. The most famous of these is the Chester Beatty Papyrus. In it, dreams were divided into two categories. The interpretations were very detailed. For example, seeing a person eating crocodile meat in a dream was considered a good sign. It meant that he would get a government position. Seeing your face in a mirror was a bad sign, foreshadowing change. Special priests were responsible for interpreting dreams. These people lived in temples. If a noble Egyptian had an important or disturbing dream, he would go to such a priest. The priest would analyze the dream and give recommendations on how to proceed. Sometimes people would specifically order a dream. They would spend the night in the temple in a special room. This was called incubation. They hoped that in this holy place, a god would appear to them in a dream and give them the answer to their pressing question. If the dream was bad, it had to be neutralized. There were rituals for this as well. The person had to recite a special incantation immediately after waking up. It was as if they were erasing the bad omen. Dreams were so important that pharaohs made state decisions based on them. If the pharaoh dreamed that the god Amun demanded that a new temple be built, construction began immediately. The dream was a direct divine instruction. Ordinary people also attached importance to dreams. A dream about the flooding of the Nile could portend a good harvest. A dream about losing a tooth could mean problems in the family. Thus, the world of dreams was as real to the Egyptians as the waking world. It was a window into the divine, a tool for communicating with higher powers. Therefore, the night journey of the soul was not only dangerous. Although basic ideas about sleep and its dangers were common to all, the everyday conditions of sleep differed dramatically. The social hierarchy of Egypt was evident even in how people slept. The gap between the pharaoh and the peasant was enormous. The peasant, as we have already mentioned, slept on a reed mat. His headrest could be a simple wooden block or a bundle of cloth. His sleeping place was the floor of a mud hut or a flat roof. His bedroom was shared by the whole family. There was no privacy. All the household members slept nearby. His protection was minimal. A simple fence amulet and verbal incantations. A nobleman or official could afford more. He had a separate room. His bed was made of wood with a rope net and linen mattresses. His headboard was made of alabaster and decorated with carvings. His bedding was made of the finest linen. Next to the bed stood a chest for clothes. There may have been paintings on the walls. He was protected by more expensive and numerous amulets. The pharaoh's sleep was a matter of state importance. The pharaoh's bedroom in the palace was one of the most protected rooms. It was not just a living space, but almost a sanctuary. The pharaoh's bed was a work of art made of gold and ebony. Several such beds were found in Tutankhamun's tomb. They were tall, richly decorated, and had complex symbolism. Guards stood at the entrance to the pharaoh's bedroom. But more important was the magical protection. Special ritual objects were placed around the bed. Every evening, priests performed complex rituals to protect the sleeping ruler. The pharaoh's headrest was made of gold or ivory and inlaid with precious stones. All his bedding was new and ritually clean. His sleep was guarded by the chief gods of Egypt. But despite all these differences, both the pharaoh and the peasant closed their eyes with the same thought. They both entered the dangerous world of night, and both hoped to return safely in the morning, when the Ba would return to the body. We can see that sleep in ancient Egypt was far from our understanding of rest. It was a complex ritual, balancing on the edge of two worlds. The absence of beds, sleeping on rooftops, hard headrests. It was not just physiology, but a whole philosophy woven into religion and everyday life. Night was a time of trials, and morning was a time of rebirth. Studying these details allows us to better understand the worldview of the people who built the Great Pyramids. What other aspects of ancient civilization's daily life would you like us to explore? Perhaps you are interested in their diet, medicine, or family relationships. Suggest topics for future videos in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new research.